Masachet Zevahim Daf Sadi Vav, continuing from Sadi He Amud Bet, 13 lines to the bottom. Hahu Tanura De'athuba Tihaya. It was an oven and they had animal fat that was coated inside before they baked bread inside. Asar Baba Aila Lema Chalad Iftada Olam. The Baba said you can never eat bread from that oven as well as ever. Va'afilu Milcha, even just salt. Dilma Atim Lemechla Be'kutha, because you might actually come to eat the bread with a dairy dip. Kutach is like a Mezrach Petachim talks that it's like a dip made out of like spoiled milk. Delicious. Metve. En lashin et ha'isa b'halav. You cannot knead dough with milk. Ve'im la ashkoa pat kula asuran. If you did knead it, entire bread is asur. Mipnei shehriga avra, because it might lead to someone eat it with meat. Okay, well, similarly, en tashin et tenor ba'aliyah. You can't also grease the oven with the tail of a sheep. Ve'im tashkoa pat kula asura ach yasi v'tenor. And if you did do it, the entire bread is always asur until you fire away the oven to kish the fat. So we see the firing of the oven does kish the fat. So how come in the first case we say it's forever asur? The Gemara says, "Tiyufta it's a good question, Tiyufta. Now that we knocked him out, that's the case. Why did Rav say that the pot that's earthenware that was used for hametz has to be broken by Pesach because of the hametz inside? Why can't you just remove it with fire? The Gemara says, the oven was a metal oven. And you can't do that won't work by earthenware. That's why it would only work there. But they have an answer. Can a traditional head even an earthenware oven? The problem is with the oven, that's done from the inside. The inside out's getting burnt out. Versus the pot, you can only burn it from the outside. The Gemara says, "Ben Avid has okay, so burn it inside the oven, the pot." The Gemara says, because they might break. Hilka Haikubia, therefore, they used to have like this earthenware ring that the insides were greased for bread making. Has a You can only, since you only fire from the outside, it is always asur. But if you could be done, even according to the Yehuda, says lo kamar ba'itz. He says that when it's not metal, it's kasher. It only applies by wood. I've had a slope, but he would even agree that earthenware is always asur. You always to come over to him. He ever started instead of learning about Rabbi Hama, he started learning under Rav Sheshat. One day Rabbi Hama met Rav Yitzchak, his old student Amarle. He said to him, "Aklaftan naktan reha ate." He said, he called him like arrogant. He said, "Oh, you only go to people who are great just to hang out with them. That's why you left me." Mishum da'azat la hamakamid Rav Sheshat. You think that once you went to study with Rav Sheshat, now you're like him? Amalei answered him back, "Lav mishum hachi." That's not the reason why I left. More kiva in the Mechilta, when he said, "Rabbi, when I used to ask you a question, Pashat lemisera, you used to answer me through logic. When I used to ask you a question through from a Mishnah, you used to knock it out. After Shad, however, kiva when I ask him a question, Pashit lematite, he'll answer me from a Mishnah. When I had another Mishnah that goes against that Mishnah, uh, matnita matnita, that's just a different opinion on Mishnah, and therefore." Um, if he answered me from another Mishnah, that would at least it would make sense. You're answering me from another Mishnah, so machlokit. Amarle, he says back to him, one second. Ask me a question, I'll answer you with a Mishnah. What's the problem? Test me. But I said, okay. Bishad said, clearly, someone cooked only in a part of a vessel. Ta'un rikav shtifa in ta'un. Do you have to purge and rinse the entire thing or just the part that was cooked in? Amarle answered, in ta'un mideda have aza'ah. There's no, you don't have to, just like the case of the blood that's splattered on the garment. You don't have to wash the whole thing. Gemara says, "Well, that's not true." Mishnah did not say that. Amar, they said, "Mistavra kibeged." No, and he said, it makes sense to be considered like a garment. Ma beged eno down kibus ala kol adam afkli. Just like the garment doesn't need only the place of the laundering or the place of the blood. So to the vessel also where it was cooked. Eno tamari kashtifa elama kom shishul. Amar answered him back, "Me dam, you can't compare. Dam lo mutafia vishul mutafia. Blood does not spread beyond the actual location, and cooking does. The grease and everything spreads." Well, another Braita says, the blood is more strict there than purging and rinsing. And also the stringency of the purging and rinsing over this blood. This blood is more strict because the halacha of splattering of the blood on the garment applies to outer hatot and inner hatot. It also applies even before you threw the blood in the that does not apply to the purging and rinsing of the vessels that only were had to be done to vessels that a edible korban was done in. It doesn't apply to the inner hata'od, which was not eaten. The actual intrinsic kind applies even before throwing blood. Sorry. I mean, why is the purging in more hamur? Because it applies to kosher koshim and kosher kalim. Bishal looks at the clean, only kash tifal clean. If you cooked in part of it, you have to wash the whole thing. Mashanik does not apply to a blood stain. Question against him. Marle, Itan is like, okay, right, if you have a right against me, I'll agree. Rabbi agreed. Tamai, what's the reason we have to wash the whole thing? If it's in a copper vessel, it was cooked. But the fact that it said bikli in the kli, it sounds like even partial. Okay. The high kosher koshim. Next time Mishnah said that if the meat was kosher koshim, you have to purge and rinse. And Rabbi Shimon said only kosher kalim, only kachim, but not kalim. تمران حتات بنسس حتات اني حتات اني نو حتات كل شيء also other كونات تمام ما كل شيء هي. Therefore, all korbanot. Yachol shani mervet truma. Maybe in truma is included in that. Tamadumar says otah it. Tamadumar excludes truma. The Mary Rida to contribute that. Rabbi Shimon says kosher koshim te'ona merika shtifa. Kosher koshim needs to be purged and rinsed. Kosher kalim enan te'onin merika shtifa. But kosher kalim does not need to be rinsed. It's kosher koshim kosher kalim no excludes kalim. I tend to be that. How come Rida includes kalim? We see otah the most truma because the word otah is excluding truma. Therefore, the kosher kalim is included with the other korbanot. The Rishon Malach Rishon says, "Otah," no, the word "otah" is used to teach you, like we said before, if it only included kosher kachim, there would no need reason to exclude teruma. Therefore, it teaches you the actual excluding kalim. Okay, but teruma labayit shifam merikah. 1 second, teruma doesn't have to be washed. What are you talking about? How's that possible? But then it says, "Kidirav shebishel basar levish halav." Pot that cooked meat, you should not cook milk. Being bishel, but if they did cook milk in the meat pot, then it's asur if it gave a taste. Turuma, regarding turuma, lo bishel halim, you should not cook in it unhegdesh, non-kadosh foods. Being bishel, but if you did cook, then the favor does give a taste, it's asur. So you see, turuma flavors can make isur for a non-kohen. So you do need to wash it. The Gemara says even by turuma. Marbella, Lo Tzricha the more Amor, we want to only explain it for the following halacha. Bishal means that Klita on Medikash Tifat Kli. If you cooked in part of the Kli, you have to wash the whole Kli. Hatruma, Lo Tzricha Makom Bishul, but in regards to Truma, you don't need to wash the whole Kli, only that location. Marbama says, Lo Tzricha the more, no, the halacha for something else. The mime, and mentioned that the copper vessel be washed in water. You can't use wine. The mime, again, water, lo mazug, not in diluted wine. Ha'afil b'yan v'afil mazug, but in the case of Truma, you could use wine or even diluted wine. No, different reason. Purging and rinsing them with cold water. But in Teruma, you could even do just one hot water. That only applies to the opinion that which is Rida Nasi that says that purging and rinsing in the Torah is done with cold water. But according to the opinion that holds that the purging is hot water and rinsing in the Torah mentioned is cold water, how does he explain this? So Teruma, for sure, we need hot water. Gemara says, no, according to Hachamim, you wouldn't need to do the rinsing. You would just be insufficient with the initial hot water. Okay, new Mishnah. Rabbi Tefan says, if you cook meat in the beginning of the Chag, you can cook it in the entire Chag. Hachamim say, at the time of eating and rinsing and purging, purging is like the purging of a cup, and also the rinsing is like the rinsing of a cup. We'll explain what everything means in the Gemara. Medika and the purging, Ushifa and the rinsing, Bisinin is done with cold water. Hashifud, Baskala, that is in the Masechet of the Zera. Hot stuff, hot cooking items like a spit or the grill, using for korbanot, the meat. Marilim, you have to use hot water only because it was used with hot. Basically, you have to match it up with what it was used for. Why does the Richmond hold that the purging and rinsing it on top of Sadi Het Zayin? Why is it not needed on Chag? The Amar Krapa says, you could turn around in the morning and go back to your tents. The Torah therefore says all days of the Chag is considered one day, one morning, and therefore, just like you don't have to rinse until the end of the day, so to the Chag is one day, the whole Chag one day. Second. in pigul beregel. One second, no such thing as pigul during the Hag. There's no type of no such thing as left over in the Hag, right? There's no such thing that of what's pigul having intentions at the wrong time. What's notar leaving something for too long. But if you're telling me that the entire Hag is one day, then it should be no that should not agree, that should not exist. Maybe you tell you that that's the case. But it says, the entire Hag is only this one long day in regards to purging and rinsing, not anything else. So how do you explain? Each cooking of every day purges what was cooked in the previous day. So it's the fact that you are cooking it in the next pot, it helps for the it helps for to basically clean it out from yesterday. Next, the Hamir adds ben Achila Hamim say until the next time of eating. My kanal zamin. Mar Nachman Bar Ravua, Mamtina adds man Achila V'Hadar Avid La Merikav Shifa. Hamim said that one has to wait till the time for eating was cooked, and then he could do the rinsing and washing. You shall purge and rinse it. Uktiv and other pasuk says, "Kol zachar b'kohanim yachal." All male kohanim should eat it. That doesn't mean these two things. Mamtin la adzman achila. That must be that you have to wait till you're able to eat it. V'hadar avid lamrikav shtifa, and then you could wash it. Mirika, the purging, cup purging, rinsing of the cup. What's going on? Number 9. Mirika, when you purge and rinse, it's done with cold water. Either read it behind say no. Mirika, Bahamim, mentioned this before. Today's Amud. Purging is hot, and rinsing is and rinsing is cold. My time I run, how come purging and rinsing is separate? How come just like we do regarding the offering of a hot of a cooked item for the Abdazra pots, we have to do that as well. Same thing, hot and cold. The Bria Malachim says, no. Hagala lo kamina. I'm not talking about the taking out forbidden isurim in the pot. That has to be done with hot water. I'm just talking about using, when I'm saying doing cold water, I'm saying after you already did hot water. If that was the case, if both done with cold water, then the pasuk would have used the pesukim would have used the same language, morak twice or shutaf twice. My umorak v'shutaf, why mentioned two separate words, purge and rinse? Shamina must be merikava hamin shutaf, it must be two different things. One's purging hot, one's rinsing cold. But how does he explain? Iktiv morak morak. If you only wrote morak morak, havamina tezin direct something that you would do cold twice. It is in shutaf. If you mentioned shutaf, I would have thought you do cold rinsing twice. Like morak shutaf, if you to do purging and rinsing, purging is washing the inside with cold water, and rinsing is like rinsing the outside of the cup with cold water. Amen.